Good morning, Wrestling Inc. It is time for another installment of the Wrestling Inc. Daily. I am your managing editor of WrestlingInc.com, Nick Hausman, and joining me today is typically Paul Pratt, but I think that we are honored to have here today in all of her glory, Pollo Del Mar. Pollo, welcome to the Wrestling Inc. Daily.
Hey, Nick, it's fun to be my first time on like this, and I'm only waiting for all the comments that we get, some of which surely will be like pretty good, but others maybe not so much. But happy Pride, everyone.
Happy Pride Month. I'm sure it's going to be a positive space. We've got all these great people tuning in live right now. If you're watching us live, jump in the comment section. Positive reinforcement. You can say whatever you want about the news, but positive reinforcement here is always appreciated.
Yeah, especially for this.
I put on my best bar t-shirt. I won this at a turtle race one time at a bar.
Well, hey, I'm just honored that you finally showered today for this episode.
I did. Yesterday or Tuesday, whatever. I did shower.
Tuesday.
That was a rough morning. I was disgusting. But anyway, yes, I'm fully bathed. Pollo Del Mar is in the house. You're here chiming in on the comment section, and we got a big show planned for you today. Obviously, some big buzzy news from the past 24 hours. Later on, after the news, if you're in audio form, you know the drill. You're going to hear part 2 of my interview with Barry Horowitz, a fired-up Barry Horowitz. Again, there's some profanity in this interview, and there was in part 1 as well.
No.
I know. Barry Horowitz, Mr. Technical, in the house here getting very real. And so Barry will be here, and if you're watching us in video form, we're less than an hour away from that part 2 debuting over on the Wrestling Inc. YouTube channel or premiering, so we can all watch it live together. You can jump in the chat room, check it out in video form, check it out in audio form, check it out. It's part 2 with Barry Horowitz. At the end of the show, we're going to look at who you think could possibly be the next WWE King of the Ring. But before we get to the news, and that will be part of what we're talking about, I want to send our regards out to Brutus the Barber Beefcake, apparently dealing with some health issues, according to his wife, Missy Leslie. She noted on Facebook that Beefcake had a blood pressure reading of 170 over 110 with shortness of breath. Is that bad? I'm not really a health person.
Yeah, like I think my blood pressure is usually something like 140 over 70 or 140 over 60, something like that. So that's bad.
Okay, that's bad. That's bad. So she asked for prayers, informed everybody that he'd seen a doctor yesterday morning, but Brutus was obviously on the show like 2 weeks ago. So that caught me off guard. And obviously, since Brutus came on and told us those great Warrior stories, he told us the story about how the Nasty Boys had that $10,000 fart.
Yeah.
Right. Great headline. Just good content. Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, it's interesting to note that when I was a little kid, this was before the Nasty Boys were really successful. They were wrestling down in Florida. And I remember meeting them they used to wrestle at our local flea market, and I would meet them, and they were stunned because they were kind of like on the up and coming type of side of things at that point. And I remembered all these matches of theirs from like Continental Championship Wrestling and the AWA, and they were stunned. They were like, "What? You know our real names? You know who we are?" So good guys. They were always treating me really well, and I was very excited to see them go on and fart thousands and thousands of dollars.
Thousands of dollars, 100%. Yeah. I don't really know Jerry. Oh, I've interviewed both of them, but Brian, because he does a lot of promoting, like he's a promoter of Legends of Wrestling down in Florida. What a nice, he's always been super nice, like overly nice to me. He said he was going to fly me down to Florida pre-pandemic to come to one of these shows and like hang out in the back. And Liz's grandma lives down there in Florida. And I was like, hey, can I bring Sally with me to go meet the wrestlers? And she was like, oh, that's all she wants. I was going to really be a big shot there because of Brian Knobb. Didn't happen. Maybe in the future. So,
well, one of the things going back to Brutus Beefcake, I think that it's very easy for us to forget that not only is he a little bit at an advanced age, but he's had significant, medical issues throughout his career. Remember, his entire face was rebuilt. He was like entirely rebuilt, his entire head. So, it's one of those scenarios where we forget that our legends have lived the lives they have, perhaps. And so best wishes to Brutus the Barber Beefcake.
Absolutely. And look, we have our first bit of feedback here on Pollo being in the house. Samantha, you look stunning, Paul.
Thank you, Samantha. I appreciate you.
Yes. So, all right. Anyway, jump in the comment section. We got big news to talk about here. Again, sending our best out to Brutus, but let's get to it. News you can use, news will leave a bruise. Now speculation on WWE possibly bringing back the King of the Ring tournament this year after comments made by Adam Pearce, Xavier Woods, and King Baron Corbin. Corbin appeared on the bump yesterday morning for an interview as he prepares to put his crown on the line against Shinsuke Nakamura this Friday night on SmackDown. Kayla brought up how Xavier Woods is also interested in becoming King of the Ring. He's talked about that a lot in his career. Pierce responded to Corbin's interview, said they have had many conversations about King of the Ring and his crown. He also indicated there may be more to come, as he told fans to stay tuned. And a fan on Twitter then wrote how Pierce suggested the tournament could be in the works, and Pierce dismissed those comments, saying Adam Pierce didn't suggest anything. So it's a tease and a non-tease with Adam Pierce.
Well, I mean, come on now. They've been teasing this on SmackDown itself for weeks with the back and forth between Shinsuke and Baron Corbin over that crown. And the fact that, as people mentioned, Xavier Woods has called himself like a future King of the Ring on social media for like 2 years at least.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Woods would be a great King of the Ring. It's time, right? Like, Corbin's held this thing for like almost 2 years now, I think. And sometimes I don't really know that it did for Corbin what it's done for others. I think it was like a linear thing.
Yeah.
Just kind of put a hat on, right? You just kind of stayed Baron Corbin.
I think that he had the coolest looking crown. I thought in terms of like the appearance, I thought his was the coolest looking. I think that Baron Corbin successfully makes people hate him, but I'm not sure that we hate him in the way that we want to hate heels. I just don't really want to see him on my television.
You just find him to be bland? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, there's something lacking there.
Okay.
I think that in terms of the King of the Ring tournament, I'm always a big fan of any tournament. So I love a single elimination tournament. So let's have that, come back. It'd be best if it was one whole day. Like, I would love to see it just be one event.
Sure. And, I put Jimmy Uso in the poll that we'll talk about later.
I saw that as well. I think that'd be a really interesting twist on things. It would give, main event Jay something to do too.
Yeah, exactly. Because like I'm actually finishing up SmackDown from last Friday this morning here right now because I'm just so behind on everything right now. And man, they're doing great work over there, right? The three of them is just really compelling television, and that's why anything to mess with the power dynamic between those three, I think is really interesting because I genuinely believe Roman will murder somebody on camera at some point.
Oh well, it's probable if they keep going in that sort of like Al Capone type of direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also, by the way, more comments here. Amarino, Paul, you in the 80s, love it. LOL. Very 80s inspired today, right?
It's true. Very, very true.
Yeah. And Noob saying, hopefully fans will get a Queen of the Ring tournament as well. Is it?
Well, I'm right here, Noob.
I know. That's why I came up. But should we? Should it be equal representation like everything else now, or the women?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that I certainly see that, but I think that the problem that we're going to encounter with this is that over the course of the years, somebody being named Queen of the Ring was always a big part of the King of the Ring, right? Like Queen Sherry and Queen Sharmell.
Oh,
so I've always thought that was a fun part of the history of those titles, but I think that there should be a Queen of the Ring tournament. I think that we've, or just at least bring back the, Mae Young Classic.
Well, I think a Queen of the Ring would be cool, especially with like Charlotte referring to herself so regularly as the Queen. I mean, it's kind of like Jerry Lawler and Bret Hart, right? When Lawler came in, it was like, no, I'm the king, right?
Yes.
Anything to kind of build interest there and animosity in a believable way. I see that tie in there. And Charlotte could work as the Queen, against the Queen, anything like that.
Well, I mean, they have so much royalty in that division. We've got an empress, we've got a queen, we've got, there's a variety of things. Like the women's division is stacked with those different kinds of various titles. So if they were to go in that direction, I would fully support it. I think that they've certainly got the talent and depth of roster for that too.
We also have Steven Wilson here. I want King of the Ring to be a singles wrestler. If you give it to an Uso, it just ties up another title in the storyline. There needs to be other stories. That's a very good point. That's a great point.
It is. It's a valid point for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And then I started to think who would be some people that are not associated with anything that could possibly, where this is. Hey, Otis is rebuilt now. King Otis. We got Money in the Bank Otis. Maybe it's time for King Otis.
No
King
Otis. The obvious answer to me is Cesaro. Cesaro, To me, that seems like a great option for him to, and again, it doesn't have to be this big over the top type of scenario where it becomes like the robes and the crowns and all of that. It's just literally crowning somebody the king of the ring and, is the professional wrestler.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. King Otis. I loved King Ralph, and it's kind of the same. So,
no.
What about hey, I like this from Dino Garofalo. What about someone like a Cesaro or Cedric Alexander who could use it?
Again, Cesaro, I fully right there with you on that one.
And another write in here about you, Polio, watching this whilst eating my dinner in the UK. Always love the daily. By the way, Paul, you look far more stunning than Eva Marie.
And I promise you, if I came out to the ring with Piper Niven, I would have introduced her. I would have put her over. It wouldn't have been all about me.
And you wouldn't have cringed when she came to hug you?
I'd cringe if Otis came to hug me, but probably not Piper Niven.
That kind of set the tone for all the social media stuff. We're gonna talk about it here a little bit more, but I feel like that whole segment set the tone for not a great response for Piper, right? I don't know.
I think that they're gonna build her to be this sympathetic character who's, whatever, the kid sister who's trailing around somebody who's got a cool big sister or whatever. I just think that I don't know. I mean, I was right before we came on here. I was watching SmackDown from last Friday, some highlights of that, and we had Carmella after being defeated, but still the most beautiful woman, and what it made me think about is I was down at Stanford University a couple days ago, and there was this really well-built, beautiful, athletic woman came up, and she was wearing a shirt that said female athlete on the front of it, and then the female had a line drawn through it, and it said athlete, based on my accomplishments, not my gender. And it's one of the why is it most of the time people are not running around in the male division being like, I'm the hottest male wrestler. I mean, of course there's occasionally a Rick Rude, but not every generation doesn't have that person.
Angel Garcia or Angel Garza, right? He's kind of got that vibe going to him at the moment.
He's more of a ladies man. His gimmick's a ladies man, not, you know what I mean?
But he does the stripper tearaway pants thing too.
And I am so grateful for that. I mean, I'm really grateful for that. But I also think that he is really talented, and I don't think that that's it. The distinction is the fact that women constantly fight against being demeaned and or discussed exclusively for their appearance. So when that becomes the focal point of their entire an entire angle, it just speaks really poorly of the women. And I also will say that with somebody like Piper Niven, who obviously does not fit the cookie cutter I'm about to post for Playboy model that WWE has constructed for the women for the past 30 years, having her come in as something like this, with the eye makeup that remind me of Mimi from the Drew Carey show and all this stuff, it harkens back to Bertha Faye when she was against Alundra Blaze, and the way they treated women who are Piper Niven's not an enormous woman. It's not like she's 800 pounds, but they treat her like she's the most unappealing thing, because that's why she needs to be saved by Eva Marie.
Well, I'm going to throw in here while we're talking about Piper Niven. So she took to Twitter yesterday, reacted to the body shaming comments that fans have made following her Raw debut. She said, successful big people are often met with this because we remind people of their own shortcomings. They want to believe that success is only for the, quote, perfect people, and that's why they didn't achieve their dreams, and we prove them wrong. Don't even worry about them. I don't. Face throwing kiss emoji. And I've seen Jordan Grace kind of chiming in on this as well, and other people that are now joining this conversation on social media. It's always so weird to me when WWE does something wrong and it becomes a teaching moment.
Well, the thing about it is the reason that WWE has set Piper up for those body shaming kind of comments because they've literally placed her in a position where she's being presented as the ugly one. You know what I mean? And it's well, is she? Because I think there's a great deal of beauty to a woman like Piper Niven who could snap Eva Marie in half like a twig,
right,
and beat whatever is left of her to death with her own leg.
But she's so desperate to be friends with Eva Marie, right? And once
right, because yes, oh my God, I'm just so desperate to be friends with somebody who comes across as entirely unlikable.
Oh my God, I really did. I'm glad.
But the mean girl angle always does work on to some degree. I just think that, I just feel like they've set Piper up to be that teachable moment for all people.
Well,
and that's a really unfortunate thing.
Well, Antonio Garcia saying here, I think they could set up Piper to be one of the most beloved superstars if done right. But that's a big if, isn't it?
Yeah, especially since they have a track record of never doing it right for stories like this.
The Piggy James stuff, like all of that. There's a litany of body shaming, storylines you could point back to in WWE.
Very interestingly enough, though, I would say that not only do they possibly have the ability to make Piper super over with the fans, beloved because of this story, but the problem becomes that WWE has a track record in its own right of once a character is over with fans in a situation like that, they do whatever necessary and possible to destroy that. Look at Otis. Otis got over as the second coming of like this Dusty Rhodes everyday guy type of role. He was chasing the beautiful girl, and then finally he caught her attention, and they were so incredibly over, and then boom, they dissolved that relationship, never mentioned it again. And what is Otis since then? Not.
He's shaved. He's become Chris Farley, right? In a lot of ways. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's great, and I will support him when he's living in a van down by the river. But nevertheless, I just don't want to see it on my TV.
We are going to see him fall through a table face first at some point. Like they're going to show Vince that SNL sketch. He's going to be like, "God damn it, we're doing this."
Yeah, well, I can't wait for him and Patrick Swayze, R.I.P., to be Chippendales dancers together.
We also had Frollo Mayo saying, Frollo Mio, didn't they just do this with Alexa Bliss and Nia Jax like a year or two ago? Yeah, similarly, but Nia Jax, I feel like there's an edge with her, right? There's always kind of been a toughness. The fact they brought Piper Niven out, so just bright-eyed and naive. I thought top to bottom they just did her a disservice, and we'll see where it goes. But I thought, especially after 8 or 9 weeks of promo from Eva Marie I thought she was coming out with Parker Bordeaux.
I would have been much more interested if they wanted to bring Eva Marie out and do this in quite the reverse, where Eva Marie is like the hapless Shawn Michaels type, and Piper Niven plays the muscle that has to get this thing across, like playing the bodyguard for this person. It's the same, I don't want to shortchange whatever they might have coming for us, but at the same time, just very like off the top of my head, from them acting like they'd never seen Piper, who literally has been performing on their own product, from who is this young lady, that to the whole thing was very cringy. And then of course, for her to mow through Naomi like that, like what is that doing for her?
That is the other side of the coin, right? It's like I feel lost in all this. We touched to this a little bit on Tuesday's show. But
I was there watching, but
yeah, man,
the service to everyone involved.
Yeah, real. And like I said then, I'll say it again. I feel like there's going to be like some kind of creative change that's being made here in the wake of this. I don't think they anticipated this. I think this was a blind spot for them. I think they were just doing the same old stuff, recycling storyline.
Wait, you think it was a blind spot that they didn't think people would respond so negatively to this?
I do. I don't think they saw. I think Vince was like, "What? Come on, you people think people are going to take this seriously?" No.
Yeah, I mean, I want to make it clear, like this is not my thought process, because I've been defending Piper this entire time, but I think that they're like, this is the only way to get a fat girl across, like this. They have to be hapless. We need her, and. I mean, I do think there is a strong possibility that the audience, if presented this story for enough weeks where Piper is lovable and, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and all of these things, and then Eva Marie just mistreats her, and we see a degradation type of story, and then Piper snaps on her, like that could get Piper really over. But once again, my confidence in WWE carrying this storyline to a completion and then having anything in mind for a Piper-like character after this is done is so minimal, because they really do feel that women have to be sexually marketable to be viable in-ring competitors.
Yeah. We're going to switch gears here a little bit. And by the way, love the conversation. Lots of comments coming in right now. Keep them coming. And we will get back to some of the King of the Ring talk here in the mailbag, but we'll do a kind of anything you want to bring up. Feel free to bring it up. We'll bring up anything relevant in the mailbag as well. But I want to jump to something that this morning, it is the top headline on the site, and it's just a good bit of business that was done. ESPN Sports Nation spoke with Roman Reigns, who commented on a potential match with The Rock. He said, yeah, a match with The Rock is a dream for a lot of fans, but it ain't a dream of his. You know what I mean? I get a lot of this with both Dwayne and John. These guys are doing very well for themselves. There's no question about it. If I were these guys, I don't know if I'd want to come back and deal with me. I am a problem right now for everybody. If I were them, I'd stay on set and keep pumping out those streaming service movies, adding, don't come to my ring is what I would do. As noted earlier, Reigns and Cena is rumored to be the main event of SummerSlam. Obviously, this is all in character, but I just thought that, again, like Roman Reigns gets it. This was just very well done.
I also think that the farther into that quote you go, the more it becomes character driven, for him, and putting himself over and putting that character that he's developing over. But the beginning of it is entirely rooted in truth. If you are Roman Reigns at the top of your absolute game right now, the peak and the pinnacle of your career, at the same time, it has got to be exhausting on the backside for casual people to constantly be saying to you, oh, when are you going to do the match with The Rock? When are you going to, it's like, it becomes a scenario where he's still in the shadow of his cousin, like, interestingly enough, he's playing this character that's at the head of the table who's putting his own cousins in the shadow, but that's the reality he actually lives. With the casual wrestling fan, Roman Reigns might be great in the ring today, but he's not The Rock, and he will never be The Rock.
I don't know. What I do like about this, though, is he puts himself in the same conversation, right? Like, he doesn't call him Rock or John Cena. He calls him Dwayne and John, right? Doesn't call them The Rock and Cena. Dwayne and John over there doing their thing. It does start to kind of put him, I think, in a similar light. I'm not saying they're there, obviously, because Cena and Rock are off making millions of dollars, but you start to kind of place him in that tier, and it does elevate him in a way.
Well, he is in that tier now, like in terms of dominant champion of his era. I think that we'll have to see. I think that honestly, I think that champions are only as good as their series of competitors and challengers over time. I think that, what makes somebody iconic is the people that they wrestle and defeat ultimately to be able to secure that spot. And I think that I'm not sure that Roman Reigns has defeated a litany of people that will be up to the par of either of those, but who knows? In time, definitely could happen.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, was everything we saw through this pandemic era of his return to this moment, was this just act one, right? Introducing the character, establishing the dynamic with the Usos. Is act two where we start to see Roman Reigns get those bigger wins? Because you could only deal with the action figures you had in the box at the time.
Of course.
Now we're going to see coming back, we got John Cena, The Rock, Brock Lesnar, Edge, who hasn't been on TV in a while. Still a lot of road to go there. They never did the singles match. Had to make it a triple threat at WrestleMania for whatever reason. So there are some big names out there, a lot of big names that he can start to kind of tick off the list of route they go with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the same time, WWE would be best suited to start to utilize the talent that they have, definitely spice it up, pepper in a few people who are like legendary names, a Cena, a Rock. I don't see The Rock happening, but, spice those people in to the mix. But at the same time, like, how about starting to develop some of the people that you have? I would love, I think that you mentioned it a couple days ago. I would love to see Drew McIntyre come over to SmackDown, and where we could see, the biggest baby face versus the biggest heel that they created during this pandemic generation.
I think I know everybody's saying Cena Reigns for SummerSlam, and I mean, that's a big marquee match. That makes a lot of sense, but the path to me seems to be Drew loses at Hell in a Cell, can no longer
Praying.
Right? Can no longer challenge Bobby. It'd probably be done dirty, right? You know,
it would have to be, and that would still serve the purpose.
Exactly. And then so he can't challenge for the Raw title anymore because as long as Lashley has it. So he has to find a way to get over to SmackDown so he could challenge Roman Reigns for their world championship, you know? And I don't know if maybe Drew then wins, you know, in between SummerSlam and Hell in a Cell, you have Money in the Bank. Is that where Drew McIntyre takes Money in the Bank and issues the SummerSlam challenge to Roman Reigns? I mean, that doesn't seem convoluted to me. That seems, you know, kind of obvious in a way. And I don't know. So
or you have a scenario where McIntyre loses to Lashley upcoming, and then if he were to go on to win you know, the Money in the Bank, it's a guaranteed shot at any championship. So he could jump over, he could save that, hold on to it, you know what I mean? Like, and then in 6 months after they've already done whatever they have in mind for the short term, the SummerSlams, all of those things, we could see him jump over, you know, to set that up however they need to set it up in the future.
We also have here from Frolomeo, Cena and Reigns at SummerSlam too soon. Their only reason to push it early is to bolster ticket sales, adding, but I think that's probably better off for Survivor Series or WrestleMania. Yeah, the more I think about it, Drew, Roman, SummerSlam feels like you put over the guys that worked through this period, then you start to roll in some more of these bigger names. But I don't know. There's a lot of ways you could go, obviously. Right?
I don't think that, honestly, like, they've always done stunt casting, if you will, you know, of the bringing back the major superstar to sell tickets. Right now, they do not need anything to sell tickets, presumably because people are just excited to be back. If they're gonna, you know, the problem they have isn't to give you a bigger name to want to go see, it's to give you a more reasonably priced ticket so that you can afford it.
Dino Garofalo, when Roman faces Cena, he should paraphrase him saying muscles, royalty, respect. That's pretty funny. I'd read that there. All right. The heated rivalry between AEW stars MJF and Sammy Guevara has spilled out of the ring and onto social media. Man, this filled my
incessantly.
Dude, this filled my timeline for like 4 hours yesterday. So the skirmish began yesterday afternoon when Guevara took to Twitter, posted a photo of MJF making a stupid face, right? So MJF responded with the following. Apparently, Sammy posted a very unflattering photo of me. I've already reported it, but I genuinely hope he learns from his actions and doesn't get canceled, ... Again, don't come at the king. So after an hour of silence, Guevara returned to Twitter to respond to MJF. This response generated a lot of talk over whether or not this was part of their feud or was this real life. This is where it gets gray, I guess. That's cool. Just take a jab at one of the most difficult times of my life. I like how everyone thinks this is, quote, good character work. Meanwhile, you are truly a real piece of shit. What do you think, Polio? How do you feel about this exchange?
Well, this is like only the latest. You know, I've seen they've been doing this for weeks now. So I don't know. I do think that even when you are like in the know, like even when you're in the game and you are in a program with somebody, it goes without saying that there are certain things that you just know are sort of off limits, right? So, and Sammy Guevara getting borderline canceled and like coming back from that, like that little dig probably is like, okay, you should have known better than to go there. Like the last thing you need is somebody to reopen that can of worms, to reopen that conversation. This isn't like, you know, this is a real life thing that has legitimately ended the careers of numerous people in the professional wrestling industry in the last year alone. And Sammy skated past on the edges of it because AEW was willing to let him. And now here's MJF reminding people of it. Well, I think that whether they're friends or not, I'd be like, you are a dick.
Yeah. I agree with you that, like, especially if you're in the same company, like working together, like we're working to the same end here, right? To create a successful company and make money. It would be one thing if like Ryback hated you and made this kind of comment, which would be just another day in the world of Twitter, right?
Yeah.
But the thing with this is, like, you're right. It makes people think about it again, right? And it brings the whole conversation up about what Sammy did. I don't know that I would go so far as to say AEW let him skate on it because of all the people that were brought up in the Me Too era and like maybe deserved a second chance, right? And forgiveness and all that. Sammy pretty quickly, like genuinely apologized.
Absolutely.
Lost out on money. I know he went to like these counseling sessions, right? They seem to like take this fairly seriously. And Sammy, it's like when somebody goes to jail, is they reform their lives and you say you're nothing but a murderer, or you're nothing but a thief, whatever it may be, right? It's very callous, and I know that that's part of MJF's thing. The other part of this that really kind of like pisses me off about this, Polio, is do you think Sasha Banks wants this brought back up? Like, I don't think she does. Like, I think she probably, like, I know that her and Sammy had a heart-to-heart, and, like, she seems to have said Sammy has learned and is moving on. I don't think Sasha Banks probably wants this whole thing being brought up again right now and her name being dragged back into this. I think that it's a double fault here on Max's fault for this brain fart of a tweet that he had to Sammy and to Sasha as well, which I think is, like, as equally offensive in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, this is a scenario where, first of all, like Sammy, it was a flippant. This was something being said flippantly. It wasn't a scenario where people were making accusations of this that it actualized or something, right? This was somebody saying something really stupid, really callous, really uneducated, and then kind of taking some level of ownership of being like, you know what, that was fucked up to say. You were right. Yeah. But at the same time, now it's like a year later and we're refacing this situation. And I just think that there's a lot of other things that you could have done that ultimately would have no negative baggage with it. You know what I mean? Like for this, by the way, comes after we saw some tweeting of photos, like when Booker T tweeted a picture of like a little kid, Sammy Guevara training or something like that. And like Max made fun of that. Those are things that are perfectly harmless, like just to shame somebody, like, or whatever, for being a fan or being a this or that. This takes it into a different realm where honestly, I just think that it's bad business to bring that conversation back to light anyway.
And Peter Conklin here saying I'm guessing WWE beat Jeff Hardy to death with his alcoholism. And guess what? I'm not a huge fan of that either.
I didn't like it either.
Right? That doesn't make it okay. Also from Frollo Mayo, not going to lie, I was never a fan of Sammy Guevara. The final straw were the two separate incidents with his story with Matt Hardy, the chair throw, and that high spot. And look, that is something I think would be fair game if MJF wants to go at Sammy Guevara over that stuff, because I know Sammy and Matt have talked. Things happen. It's a very dangerous environment, but that's fair game, right? It is completely different than the kind of stuff that Max seems to have brought up here.
Right. And it's also dealing with another talent that's in your own company, and that may not be like emotionally traumatic to other people or emotionally triggering to a lot of people out there who've gone through like sexual related violence or things of that nature, where this just being brought up is like a cringe for them, or like, like a jolt, like, oh my God, that again, I don't want that.
Also in the world of AEW, they teased the launch, we think, of a new AEW championship. So on Wednesday night, the official AEW Twitter account posted 2 close-up shots of a belt with an eyes emoji. So last December, Tony Khan said on a media call that there are plans in place to introduce a trios title this year, and Cody kind of alluded to that on a media call recently as well. Several fans also brought up the idea that this could be them teasing the introduction of new AEW replica title belts. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on the tease that AEW put out, Paul or Polio.
I hadn't really noticed that specific tease. The idea of them trios titles are, I mean, that's something that's deeply steeped in Latin culture and the lucha libre culture. And I think that those, they can be prestigious if done correctly. And we've seen it done around the world correctly. The thought that I have about this is that the organization that AEW most closely tries to rip off for stories is NWA. And in NWA, those titles were a joke for most of their existence. And it was, if they're going to have another set of titles and it's going to be more than one individual title, I would love to see just a regular secondary tag team title, like what they used to have, the US tag team titles or whatever. Because whereas WWE has 2 sets of titles and 4 teams in the entire company. AEW is the exact opposite. They have like 15 teams in their company, and a lot of them are not going to have the ample opportunity to shine at the moment. So maybe that would do well for them. I wouldn't be even opposed to just another singles title because there's 1 million people in that roster. So
yeah, and they're going to be having the Rampage show, right? So maybe there's something they could do. Maybe that'll be it's on TBS, so I don't know if the TNT title is quite a fit there or not. I don't know what's going to come of that. But yeah, I don't. The trios title doesn't grab me. To their credit, they do commit more to tag wrestling than I think other promotions for the past have. So
present it well.
It's just a lot of tag team wrestling, I don't know if a 6-man title quite does it for me, but we'll see.
Well, I mean, it would give the fact that every single person in the entire company is in a faction a reason to be interesting. There's that. And at the same time, in defense of AEW presenting lots and lots of tag team wrestling, it's better than what we saw for the majority of the last 5 years on WWE, where every single episode ends up a awkwardly, paired up tag team main event, right? At least the teams in AEW have some reason for existing, and most of them are really well done. So I'll defend that. And I also just love tag team wrestling, period.
V Squared, by the way, just wrote in love polio.
Thank you.
There you go. One more. All right. Last item here before we get to Barry Horowitz. If you're in audio form, and again, we're less than half hour away from this premiering over on the YouTube channel for Wrestling Inc. If you want to watch part 2 of my interview with Barry Horowitz, again, caution some profanity. Veteran pro wrestler ACH has announced his retirement from the sport. He took to Instagram, posted a black square with a statement on his retirement saying, "No need for the dramatic or emotional wordplay. As of today, I will officially step away from professional wrestling. Thank you all for the support and the love." This just comes on the heels of Lio Rush also retiring.
That was the first thing that I thought about. 2 young, highly skilled African-American competitors, both coming out of MLW runs and where they went on the heels of their exodus from WWE, and both of them retiring like at what could potentially be the primes of their careers. It makes no sense to me.
Well, you got Faye Jackson retired like 2 months ago too. I'm not. Yeah, you're familiar. You know that, right?
Of course.
It is like, and I don't want to draw conclusions, right? This could all be coincidence, but is the fact that talented young black performers in pro wrestling become so disenfranchised or interested with this sport that they leave like a problem? And I would say yes. I would go out on a limb and say that is an issue right now that needs to be addressed.
I mean, I think that, I'm curious if any of these competitors want to speak to their reasoning behind this. It could just be that it's a strange timing and coincidence things that 3 well-known or rising African-American talents decide to retire similarly timed in like the same quarter of the year or whatever. But at the same time, if there is something that's kind of causing people to feel that there is a roadblock that they just can't, an obstacle that they can't overcome, then that's something that should be addressed. I think that with ACH, we saw him leave WWE on very unhappy terms, and then Lio Rush also left on less than flattering situation. Both had great opportunities elsewhere. I would love to know why it is that they chose this time in their career to call it quits. And with Faye, I think that Faye was just a little tired.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's just, I've talked to all these people in interviews over the past, couple of years and followed the news around them. I mean, Faye has talked to me about her issues with, being, one of the only black women in the locker room and feeling left out and, treated differently. Leo has been public with similar thoughts. ACH has also been public with similar thoughts. And that's why I say, it could be all coincidence, but I think that there's a bigger thread here, a conversation to be had about just the environment for young black performers in pro wrestling right now and why the most talented of them seem to be disenfranchised or just interested in continuing. There's an obvious thing there to me.
Well, I would love to hear personally, I would love to hear from people who have been around long periods of time and have seen tremendous success, and like to talk to like a Kofi Kingston or other people who are presumably, because of their tenure, locker room leaders, and find out how it is that they were able to overcome those feelings and situations, and to find out what their plans are or what they are currently doing in locker rooms that they're in to make sure that other people have a different experience coming forward.
All right. Well, that's going to bring us to the mailbag, to the final outro portion of the show here. Last bit of conversation. Let's get it in. I want to thank Mr. Technical Barry Horowitz once again for coming and talking to me, being so candid. Barry wants to go be a coach, Polio, and nobody wants to take him. You know,
why?
He thinks maybe what we in this most recent part that we just heard, he said, if I've got secret heat, I'd like to know about it. But that nobody's telling him why, right? But yeah,
do you mean that no company will take him or no individual will take him?
The way he said WWE, so like he goes, and we did this article that was very popular this week about how Matt Bloom disrespected him and asked him, who's our CEO and champion? And Barry didn't know and got very upset, and then communication broke down. But he's still friendly with WWE. They're doing a documentary about him. Then he says in this portion, he talked to Arn Anderson about sending his info to Cody because because Barry lives in Tampa. He's like an hour from him. And he says Arn told him he did, but he doesn't think Arn actually gave Cody his info, and he doesn't know why he can't find an opening in any of the major promotions to go in and work as a coach or trainer and agent. That's what he wants to be doing.
I mean, in fairness, I think that they probably have a significant number of people who are currently working with that company who are looking for opportunities to transition into something besides an active wrestling role. And those are the most coveted and most like rapidly filled spots in any company. And they usually transition people from within into those roles. So for, Barry to like, with all due respect to what he was able to accomplish in his career in terms of long-term visibility on television, I think that, they probably have people who are still under contract that they want to employ first.
Yeah, man. Heated up Barry Horowitz. Definitely, if you haven't seen it, go check out part 1. Part 2 will be up here in video form in like 18 minutes. So anyway, all great. Thank you, Mr. Technical, Barry Horowitz, for the time. We'll dive to the mailbag now at WInc Daily, WInc Daily. That's the account to follow. We release our daily polls. We release information about upcoming live streams and when shows come out. So go support that Twitter feed. Today's poll question, who do you think should be the next WWE King of the Ring? Shinsuke, Xavier Woods, Jimmy Uso, or somebody else? Over 200 votes here in about the last hour. 52.4%. They want to see Shinsuke with that crown. Xavier Woods gets 30.1. Jimmy at 11.2. And the rest are write-ins. I get the desire to see Shinsuke, but he could take this crown and beat King Shinsuke on Friday if he beats Baron Corbin and never even have to do the tournament, right?
I mean, I think that the reason that people would be, when you give them an intuitive, like, no offense to that tweet, but when you give them an intuitive answer that they've already been, like, WWE's already been sort of leading towards, like, they're going to be like, I want to see him, finish this thing that we're already seeing on TV. Like, if it was like, if you gave them an 8-person, tournament bracket, like, who would you want to see win this? I think that to me, what I think of those results, like, okay, we've got the Uso, who that if we take what we heard earlier in the show, like that would just tie up another thing with that angle, which is already dominating. Like, okay, so we remove that. If we give Xavier Woods, then that means that we see the end of the New Day. And they're already teasing that too on Raw, where they're like trying to break, MVP is trying to break up the New Day. If they do that, would it make sense for Xavier Woods to be the King of the Ring? Well, maybe. And then Shinsuke is we see him, and I just want to see him with something consistent. I would love to see him go back to NXT so we could see him as a real back to what we were accustomed to seeing him as. Like, I guess.
I agree with you. Yeah, well, we got some other write-ins here at Hipple Woods for sure, but I'm not. But if not him, then Corbin again, because Twitter would be hilarious. Back to back, just keep the crown on. No, I agree with that. No. At DJ Esquire, New York City, more times than not in pro wrestling, the obvious answer is the right one. Nakamura is the guy. Maybe he can face former Kingslayer Seth Rollins after. At Black K Magic, Woods deserves some time in the solo spotlight. And the last one here from Twitter at California WZWA. Elias, King Elias. King Elias would be on the same level as King Corbin for me. I don't see any change.
I actually saw that response, the Elias one, and I was like, no, I don't want to see any. At this point, it's sad to say I don't want to see anything from Elias. I don't want to see anything from him. I don't want to see anything from Jackson Riker. I'm just sort of like, they've been squandered. Their time has been lost.
I know. I don't know what they need to do to get Elias back on the tracks. He was really fun when he first came out. Had everybody he did all the stuff with the big names where he got laid out by Undertaker and all this stuff. And now it's just like.
And he was red hot.
Yeah. Red hot. Just like lost in the wind now. I like this right in here from Samantha. I could see Damian Priest as the king. And yeah, man, you talk about a young talent that could maybe benefit from something like that. He's really adrift here right now. Following all the stuff that he's been into. Yeah, why not?
I love the idea. What I see is the idea or the sentiment behind that is that push Damian Priest. I think that Damian Priest as the king role, to me, that does not align. I just would like to see Damian Priest come in and get to have great matches and have a upward trajectory. Like, I would love to see that because I think he deserves it. I think that there's a certain type of character usually that plays well with this, and I would not want to see Damian Priest as a king. Like, I want to see him succeed. I would love to see him in the title hunt, but I don't want to see him as the king.
All right, lastly here, I'll read one more from Frollo Mayo. With how they treated their last King of the Ring, forget what the fans think, who in the tournament itself wants to win. Them winning could mean their career takes a step back from where they could have been. Man, you could just become be a funny king figure that gets tossed away after this, And
well, that's actually the thought behind that is why I don't want Damian Priest in it, because I think that winning this, winning the King of the Ring gives you a career trajectory for a full year, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that Damian would do much better without that, unless they're going to give us like that kind of King of the Ring push that we saw with Owen Hart and Bret Hart and a few others, where it was like it played into them like basically taking over and dominating for the next year. If this is just like here's something for you to do for a year, I don't want Damian Priest strapped with that.
All right, everybody. Well, that brings us to the end of the show here today. Pollo Del Mar making her debut here today. Thank you very much for taking some time out of your very busy Pride Month, Pollo, to come here in full 80s regalia today. Oh my God, you're wonderful.
I mean, honestly, like I have nothing better to do right now. No, I'm still ecstatic that I get to do this with you on Thursday. So of course I'm going to make all the time in the world, and this is what needs to happen.
Pollo, I'm going to be honest. I've never done a news show talking wrestling with a drag queen, and this was like way better than I expected. Like, I didn't know you were going to show up today as Pollo Del Mar. I didn't know, if it would change. It did change nothing. We had the same conversations as always. You just look more beautiful, and I enjoyed this. So thank you. Wow. I'm glad you all enjoyed this. I see a lot of hearts today and thumbs up signs. So if you like the show, continue to do that. Tell your friends about us. We're here Monday through Friday, noon Eastern. I'll be back tomorrow. I will have Christy Olsen in the chair. She's going to be talking the news of the day. We're also going to have part 2. Oh, wait, no, wait. Christy's not here tomorrow. Christy's out. Tomorrow, we're going to have Forbes Alfred Kanawa on the show talking the news of the day with me. So
love it.
Thank you. Wonderful. Alfred will be here tomorrow. We're also going to have part 2 of Drew Rice's conversation with Nikita Koloff. If you like WrestlingInc.com or Wrestling Inc. Daily, support WrestlingInc.com. We're on all the socials. And the Wrestling Inc. podcast is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Fridays, weekends after pay-per-views. Watch that. Subscribe over on the RSS feed as well. Pollo, where can people go find you, follow you, support you, all that?
Oh, well, I'm at twitch.tv/Pollo Del Mar. We've been doing a lot of old school wrestling viewing there. Of course, I'm on Twitter. You see the handle right underneath, and Pollo Del Mar fans on IG. If you are in the Northern California area, come and see me live at wrestling events this weekend. I've got a wrestling show for Underground Wrestling Alliance on Saturday in San Jose, California. And Sunday, it's the Prince X of Pride tournament in Pacheco, California. I'm super excited about that. And then the next week, June 25th, I'm in Vegas for Fearless, presented by the Dark Sheik. It's going to be amazing. What a crazy 2 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm at Nick_Houseman. The brand new episode of Pro Wrestling for Life came out this morning on all major podcast platforms. You can check that out. Me and Sean X-Pac Waldman. We chatted with Matt Cardona. Then we brought on Effie. Have another great Pride Month conversation. And
that's my boo. I love Effie. I love Effie.
You got to play Jobber or Drag Queen. The name of the game I came up for Effie and Sean is called Pro Wrestling LGBTQ&A or Embrace the Gay Agenda. It's a very wordy name for a game, but I think it delivers.
It was. I'm excited about that. I saw that on social media, and I'm glad that you guys were able to get Effie on. Effie is really somebody who is just, in my opinion, really setting the tone for what we as LGBTQ people are able to do in the world of professional wrestling and opening doors for a lot of us. So, appreciate him so much.
Great conversation about trying to bridge the communities and how he gets death threats or got death threats at one point in his career. So
I'm sure he does or did.
What a wild talk. So go check that out. Thank you for supporting this show. I'll be back tomorrow. And remember, if you winked, you didn't miss it.